Hello, hola, you lovely, beautiful beings. Welcome back to Muse. I'm your host, Damaris, artist and creator, chatting all things creativity and how we incorporate intentional living and personal growth to the ways that we show up creatively on a daily basis. I have officially passed the 3-month mark, my 13th episode for creating and sharing on this platform, which I'm just so ecstatic and so grateful, and just feels like a very big, momentous moment. I feel like it doesn't seem like very long ago that I started this podcast, but at the same time, I feel like I've very much changed and evolved just from 3 months ago, and now we're on the 4th month. And yeah, in these last few months that I started the podcast, I have also created and launched a creativity quiz to figure out your creative voice, a toolkit that dives deeper into resources for the type of creative you are. And last week I launched the Creative Spiral course that I had been working on for a while for creatives that find themselves struggling to come back to their work, needing to figure out what their resistance is and how to move through it and create a way to come back to your work even when you fall off, which is inevitable for all of us, and to be able to create and find momentum again and to have focus to come back to your work continually, even when we have shifts, even when things, change in our lives. And I know that it hasn't been, like I said, a long time, but I have been putting a lot of work out there for other creatives and artists like me needing some support sometimes, or just tools to help us, because I talk about myself too and learning through this process of creating, to recalibrate and refocus on why we're doing what we're doing, what are the things we actually want to be creating and putting out there. Which brings me to today's topic. As I mentioned last week on the episode, I got laid off a couple of weeks ago, and since then, I have been struggling to come back to my work, completing my work and projects that I say, not just say, but that I have said, and to myself and to others, that I wanted to complete and have been working on, which at this point had been the Creative Spiral course. That was my last biggest project that I've been working on. And as much as I wanted to finish and believed in this work, in this project that I was doing, I knew my why, my purpose behind it, but it was still hard to show up and to actually do the work. But in the end, I did it. I pushed through. I feel so free and relief of the pressure that I was giving and putting on myself to complete it, even though I was trying to be and show myself grace because I had just lost my job. I still knew that there was meaning behind this project, and even though I wasn't fully as in it as I had been before, I did want to complete it, and I did want to put 100% into creating this awesome course. And I'm just so proud of it, so proud that I was able to complete it through my struggles. And Now that it's done and it's up there for all of you to explore and use for yourselves, I have room now to think about what's next, to think more deeply about my why. Why do I create? What does my work really mean to me now? And what kind of impact do I want to make moving forward with the things that I create? What is the purpose now that I'm showing up differently because of all the transition and changes that have happened in my personal life? Now that I don't have the stability of my full-time job, and the reality was that the podcast and creating these tools was for fun and there was no pressure. But now that I don't have that stability, there is a shift in the way that I'm showing up. So how is that going to look like moving forward in my creative work? Why did the fun change? Why does it seem more serious now? And I'm just asking myself all these questions. Obviously, with transition and with changes come these big questions, come these very reflective moments that are sometimes very difficult to face. Sometimes we don't want to face them because it's a lot of questions, it's a lot of contemplation. And as you can tell, there's a lot going on in this brain of mine. There's a lot of activity. It doesn't end, just because I'm done the project. Now there's room for like other ways of thinking, which made me want to come back to this theme of purpose. And I've actually been thinking about this word a lot in these last couple weeks and feel like it's something that many people right now, I don't know, either are in maybe the same situation as me or are just like contemplating this just because of the way things are in our world right now, or even just being creatives or artists trying to find and understand what purpose means for them and how that is incorporated into the way that they show up in the world. And this was my very first topic that I ever spoke about on the podcast, my very first episode, and also is actually my most listened episode. And I think the reason being is that we're all looking for meaning. With everything that's going on in the world, we want to understand that there's a reason why we're doing certain things, why we're sharing things with the world. And that is so important, such a valid thing to think about, such a valid thing to want and desire. Hence why I'm in the same boat contemplating this question again and what purpose is for me and how I cultivate this in my life. And because of this huge transition, and even just in these few months of podcasting, my perspective on this topic has evolved a little, has shifted, and that's why I wanted to share and come back to it again this month and kind of let that be kind of an overarching theme of this month, with change, with things that are uncertain, and how we kind of come back to our purpose. I think firstly being able to acknowledge that asking this very deep question to yourself is beautiful and shows that you really care about your life and your work and what you are contributing, not just to yourself and your self-worth and your work, but also to others. because your reason of what your purpose is doesn't just impact you, but it impacts everything and everyone you come in contact with, right? The way that you live your life and show up in the world impacts everyone around you and everything that you do. And I hope by sharing these new evolving or evolved perspective, I can help you to figure out your purpose, or at least getting you thinking about what it could be and maybe how it's shifting for you based on your own situations and circumstances. So let's get into it. In my first episode, I spoke about how you find purpose by moving through life. And although this is still true for me, and I do think that this is the way that we can find purpose, my approach has evolved from where I was 3 months ago, or 4 months ago now, I guess. I would say I have 8 ways that I want to share with you of how I now cultivate finding purpose in my life. Number 1, listening to the quiet voice beneath the chaos. So I question everything until I hit the truth. I'm a pretty deep diver into those areas that feel uncomfortable, are stressful, are overwhelming. I like to understand things on a very deep level. So underneath my stress and my shock about losing my job, purpose often hides under all that noise. So how I feel and contemplating all those feelings, not just feeling in general or having emotions in general, I typically go much deeper and try to create space to really understand what the feelings are or what my thoughts are on something. So feeling sad or mad or frustrated, I like to call it out. And then I make time to pause and reflect and acknowledge and mourn, even in this case, the loss of my job, the loss of that stability, and then be able to question why I feel the way that I do. Why does it affect me so much? What am I really feeling about this whole thing? So getting deep and asking these real tough questions is very important for me. Number 2, creating before I'm ready. So sharing while I'm in this kind of chaos and uncertainty. As much as I do try to have clarity in a lot of things, and I feel like I do plan and work at knowing what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, I do still create without knowing a lot of the time where things are going. I test my purpose by making things just to see how it's going to work, if it's going to work out. Just putting it out there. I think an idea is good and I try to finish it through, have that follow through. So I learn by doing the thing, not just thinking about it. And then when I do it, I get the feedback to then help me either change my approach for next time or just keep putting stuff out there and see what sticks. Number 3, following the threads of curiosity. So purpose leaves clues everywhere. What books I reach for, what topics, keep coming up that I want to talk about with anyone who's willing to listen, what ideas keep coming back to me that I'm questioning or want to dive deeper in. And I do call myself a multi-passionate. There's like multi-hyphenate, I think there's like another one, because I have found that purpose for me isn't just one thing. It doesn't just mean one thing for me. There is purpose in many facets of areas and things that I pursue and that I deem to be important in my life. So following my curiosity, following the things that excite me, help me to dive deeper into finding what my purpose looks like. Noticing what feels alive, even when it's scary. Purpose often shows up as a spark and fear. There's that like nervous energy, butterflies, excitement. Those points or places typically lead towards purpose. And I tend to follow my instincts and my gut, and the sense of knowing help me to find clarity in what feels aligned or what comes to mind that I come to understand that matters to me. So feeling the alignment and then having clarity in what matters by following my instincts and noticing that these are the things that make me feel alive. Sometimes they're scary, but the energy behind them is good, is positive, is exciting. So I try to follow that. Number 5, reframing the hard shit as part of the story. And this is definitely kind of where I'm at in this moment in my journey of figuring this hard stuff out right now. Instead of seeing challenges and resistance as derailments, I weave them into my narrative of purpose. In this case, layoff, confusion, creative blocks that I've been having, I see them as chapters in my story, in my life, in the areas that I'm struggling in. They're just stepping stones. They're just placements of the story, but not failures. So my perspective is reframing the way that these hard truths and things that are happening in my life are not failure, but are going to create meaning in my story. I try to give meaning to the chaos, and I share my story with others, even through this podcast, in this episode, to be honest about how this is a stepping stone. This is a chapter, not a failure. Number 6, trusting the version of you who's ahead. And I often have spoken about how I've created and do create for my past self. But I also very much create with my future self in mind. Even though I don't always mention it, she's very much there, present. The woman who's living the life that I want and desire. I use her, that future Damaris, as my compass. And I am aligning to that version of her in the present moment. That is my aim. And I try to create bridges of the person that I was, the person that I currently am, and the person that I'm becoming. Because that version of Damaris is who I want to be. And I have to trust that I'm moving in a way that is aligning to that version of me. Number 7, building community around shared values. My purpose is never just about me. I cultivate it by connecting with other people who resonate with my values, with the things that I believe, that I align with. And I'm willing to support and say the things that sometimes others struggle to say. But then I also take the time to listen to others when they're sharing their insights with me. And I try to apply what they share to my life and how I can use their experiences to better my life and decisions that I make moving forward. So that really does help to cultivate not just community, but finding what purpose looks like to me. And number 8, last but not least, allowing my purpose to evolve. I don't force myself to stick to old definitions. I let my purpose shift as I am shifting. And that's why, for me, my work always feels alive and in the moment. Even how I've spoken about before, throughout just these 3-4 months, I've changed every single month in how I show up on this podcast. And I'm sure I will continue to change as I continue to show up on the podcast. And I'm okay with that. There is no one way to show up. And I think the more authentic and genuine that I can be with myself first, that helps me to then show up in that way and makes what I'm talking about not just feel aligned and meaningful for me. I hope that it does feel that way for you, the listener, the person who's finding and needing to hear certain things at this very time, why you chose this episode in particular, right? So purpose isn't just one big aha moment. I don't know if that's what you were expecting to hear, of like how exactly you're going to find what your purpose is. It's not a little like checklist. Let me do all these things and bam, I got purpose now. Because it doesn't really look like that, and that's kind of what I'm trying to share. It continually changes based on where I'm at, based on all those little choices that we make every day. So what's one thing you do, big or small, that helps you feel like you're living on purpose? How do you cultivate purpose in your life? Because it is something that you do work on. It's not something that just shows up. I think that is relatable to the way that I had spoken about it at the very beginning of this podcast, because there is no one way, like I was saying, to find purpose. You do have to take action and live life, and maybe look into these 8 areas that I've just spoken about to see if maybe purpose for you lives within those areas, and how does it show up for you so that you can feel you're living the most aligned, purposeful life. So I hope this has given you some insight in ways that you can start thinking about or continue to cultivate purpose in your life, even when you're going through big changes and transitions that are difficult. And I want to say and acknowledge that you are not alone in this. You're not alone on this journey. It's not always easy or clear, but the fact that we have the ability to ask and look deeply at what purpose means for each of us is so impactful already to our personal growth, and in turn to our creative work and ability to share who we are with the world in a meaningful way. And I think that that's just so beautiful, and already that in itself to me is so meaningful. I just hope that you all have an amazing week, day, evening, night, wherever you are. Keep creating. We'll see you next week. Bye.